either way, it's going to spread. So if you're in a bad mood and you're toxic, it's going to spread. But if you try to have that positivity and genuine positivity, I should say, in relationships with people, I think that really does drive culture, and it does somewhat start at the top.
How is it going, ladies and gentlemen? This is Sean Barnes. I want to welcome you back to The Way of the Wolf. We have a very special guest on the show today. Kristin Juergens is the HR director for Accelerate Energy, and we had the opportunity to work together for many years. It's the first time we've had a member from my team that we've worked together in the past on the show. We got together for coffee recently just to catch up, and I thought we had to get her on the show to talk about her journey. Kristin, welcome to The Way of the Wolf.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. It's been too long. I'm glad that we're reconnecting. So
I know, exactly. Okay, so a lot of different topics that I want to dive into.
Sure.
Let's do this. I'm going to share a little bit of my experiences and us working together, and you fill in the gaps from your perspective.
Sure.
Sound fun?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, good deal. All right, so you started working with Nine around 2016-ish, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now, that was around the time that I had the opportunity or thought it was a good idea to start leading human resources.
Yes.
And I actually begged for that opportunity. The first year was pretty rough for us.
Yeah.
It was quite an interesting experience because I was that IT data-driven guy and didn't really know people.
Right.
One of the things that very early on I loved about us working together is you are a people person.
Absolutely. Definitely. And you balanced me out with the data, so it worked.
It did. It worked out
worked,
beautifully.
Yeah.
And, it was interesting because we had such a unique relationship in that regard because you were such a personable person, exciting and fun to be around. And at first I was like, oh, wow, this is a lot of energy. What do I do with this? And it worked out beautifully because we learned to balance each other out.
Absolutely.
I was able to bring in the structure and the data and try to think through things at a different lens. And we started working on what does the new team structure need to look like. And I also have to share how much I appreciate you being an advocate of us creating this new team structure and kind of helping me along the way. I have no doubt, I'm guessing you probably had some conversations like, his heart's in the right place. Just let's work with him. Let's coach him. Let's get him there. Right?
Yeah,
Is that fair?
That's absolutely fair. We were a little nervous when the IT guy, the quiet IT guy, I think we had said like 4 words together, like, I need a new laptop, was taking over HR. But it was like, wait a minute, maybe this is what we need, because what we had previously, even before my time there, wasn't working. So I was at least willing to give it a chance and in my people side, get others on board as well.
So talk me through, when you say it wasn't working, I have my perspective on it. I'm dying to know from your seat. You were new to the team. You're an HR assistant at the time. Talk me through what you were seeing from your seat, because you're new and in a relatively entry-level role in HR. So what was going through your mind at that point?
I was really excited to take the role, and you know me, I'm just always excited. But I realized that we had a leader at the time who had been placed in that role who didn't want it. So had to take that on and was doing a great job and was doing the right things and trying to communicate with people, but had such a bigger plate and reporting to the CEO, et cetera, that it wasn't working. We had also, I believe, a lot of competition on the team between the manager levels, and a lot of discord in that definitely wasn't working. We were very small at that point. I kind of came on because someone in HR was actually the EA to the CEO who was helping there as well. So there wasn't a lot of structure. And I mean, I had heard too, we've had directors that have failed. We have had a previous VP that has failed. So I come in like, whoa, what are they doing? But I was excited because I thought maybe this is going to work. And it didn't. Between you and the person that kind of hired me, I think we had 2 more HR directors. So it just wasn't working. But it was interesting to see someone say, give me a chance, put me in, coach. It was exciting.
Yeah. And it was. I was a bit nervous, and I was at this point in my life where I wanted more.
Absolutely.
And I didn't know what just yet, but I wanted a challenge. And I thought, hey, leading HR could be challenging.
Absolutely. Little did you know.
Exactly.
It's very challenging.
But it did change my life. So you said something a moment ago that I kind of latched onto, and that is the competition that existed with all of the HR managers. These are all the people that were reporting directly beneath the HR director role.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So how many managers were there roughly at that
3,
time?
I think about 3, probably.
Okay. And why do you think there was that competition?
I think that number one, they all wanted that director position. And they thought that they were right and others were wrong. And there was a lack of collaboration and cohesiveness on the team, and nobody really driving that. And so there was no one saying, y'all are going to get along. Y'all are going to do this. And it was almost like a sibling rivalry, it felt like. I thought they were all great people, but this person would question this person's decisions. I was right in the middle. I was corporate HR assistant. I'd hear it from everyone. So I think it was just a lack of cohesion, and maybe someone seeing that that's really where it lies, is with your people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the first exercises that we did was 5 dysfunctions of a team, which was appropriate.
It was absolutely appropriate.
At the time. And that exercise, it was, if I remember correctly, about 3 days. We read the book, and then there was a lot of exercises that we did and kind of just workshopping together. Yeah. And it was, I'm not going to, maybe challenging might be the right word, but it was interesting in that we had to get through some of those challenges, some of that friction. We had to get it all out into the open, so that we could then start working through it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. And be vulnerable with each other. That's a big part of the pyramid, with the 5 behaviors, and be vulnerable and build that trust, and then work through the conflict and really prioritize. We're really on the same team. What are we going to do going forward, as opposed to, fighting against each other?
Yeah. Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. During your time with 9, you started off as an HR assistant, and then coordinator, and then generalist.
Specialist and generalist. Very quickly. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So, yes, you did see a rapid ascension. What did you attribute those promotions to?
I think, I believe it's because I went for it, and I asked for it, and I worked hard. I have this full motto that I'm going to work harder than anybody else in the room. Typically it pays off, so I continue to do it. I think that I do know that there were business needs shifting, et cetera, but I think I made a positive impression on a very tough manager at the time as well, and just showed that I could do it. I wasn't the most experienced person in the room or the most highly, college degreed, but I had the grit, and I was willing to step in and do it, and I never said no, and I think that that's part of it.
Those are some incredibly powerful traits, that grit and tenacity and determination. It just sheer will to get it done.
Absolutely.
Goes a very long way.
Definitely.
And I know that I think that we're starting to see this shift in organizational mindset, where you don't have to have the MBA, the master's degree, if you've got relevant and applicable experience.
Absolutely.
And are good at what you do and passionate and have that determination and grit. I think organizations are starting to see there's something to that.
Definitely. And, I think the degree, I will never downplay education. I think it's important. I've gotten a degree. I'm going back to school. But I think it gets you in the door. It's what do you do with it? Because you can have a PhD in astrophysics, but you could, be working at McDonald's. If that's your heart, go ahead. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's that key in the door. But what are you going to do with it? And how are you going to apply what you've learned? I've learned more in human resources by diving in and taking on challenging projects than I ever did from my degree.
You're right. It is absolutely a key that will unlock a lot of doors. It doesn't
Yes.
keep you in
No,
the room,
absolutely not.
but
No.
it can unlock a lot of doors.
Right.
Now I'm going to ask you, what other keys do people potentially have in their pocket if they can't afford to get an education?
Absolutely. Curiosity is a big one. Ask the questions, speak up, ask people what's next, what can I do, all of that drive and that grit. And everybody has that. You've just got to kind of pull in sometimes you're tired, raising your hand and saying, hey, I'm going to do it. Asking for a seat at the table, or not even that, take the seat at the table. Say, hey, I want to attend to that meeting. I can provide benefit. I'm trying to learn. That has gotten me further than probably anything in my career. And I think we just have that innately that we can use.
We have this curiosity built into us as humans. And then I think as we grow through childhood and our formative years, sometimes that's kind of, I'm not going to say beat out of us, but it's squashed out of us.
Yes.
Like, fall in line,
Yep.
do what you're told.
Absolutely.
Okay, yes, it is important. Conformity is important to moving us in a good direction.
Absolutely.
But I do think we should never stop questioning.
Correct.
Especially if something like in our gut,
Yes.
it's like, this doesn't feel right.
Exactly.
So it is important for you to be able to comfortably raise your hand and say, okay, this isn't working for me.
Correct.
What are your thoughts? How can we do this differently?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to be prepared. Sometimes you're going to have the rejection or too bad. We've always done it this way, my least favorite words of all time, or we can't make the change right now, but that shouldn't set you back. You've got to keep going. Maybe you end up making a change because it's not right for you, but I think that you end up, realizing that if you keep speaking up and you keep, at least you have no harm in speaking up, is my view, and questioning.
So for an employee that raises their hand and says, I would like this opportunity, and the response is no, or the response is, we can't right now, what do they do next?
I think they say, okay, can you tell me why the answer is no? What am I missing? Drive that conversation deeper. Do you have a timeline where maybe we can consider this? Can I circle back with you? And keep presenting those ideas. Because even though it's not right now, that doesn't mean, or the full picture, maybe you can do part of it, right? I mean, you can do a little bit. So keep that tenacity and keep going. Because if you just give up, it's always going to be no.
I think if you have this mindset of abundance and view things through a lens of no doesn't mean no, it means
Exactly.
not right now.
Right. Absolutely.
And there has to be a balance in terms of how you approach these things, because you can't just like beat the door, just keep pounding on the door,
Right.
because you're just going to annoy them.
Absolutely.
And they're going to be, you know what? Just go away.
Go away.
We don't want you
Yeah.
here anymore.
Yeah, it's finding that balance. Exactly. Yes. Please don't beat the door down and make anybody mad because Kristin told you to. No. Find that balance and maintain that. But I think I read a post and I think you had shared with the HR team at 9 at one point that you were told no the first time. They thought you were crazy that you wanted to do HR. You probably were. It's okay. HR is something, but then you thought about it and you processed it and found the right way to approach it. And then you ended up getting, that solution and built a great team out of that.
Yeah,
So,
well, and I think that speaks to the importance of having coaches and mentors in our
Yes.
life. Whenever I walked away from her office the first time, the story that I usually share is I went back to my office to lick my wounds.
Yeah.
But then the other part that I don't always dive into is once I recovered, I walked next door into Hitch's office and said, this is what happened.
Yeah.
And he was supportive and, kind of talked me through it. And it's like, okay, well, that's okay. And having that, we'll say, coach, guide, mentor
Absolutely.
to support me and like, oh, yeah, you just got beat down with that logic
Yeah.
that she threw at you.
Yeah.
But what if we go back and approach it this way?
Absolutely.
And you wait a little bit of time.
Yep.
And, the story that I share is a few days go by and the email that I received from her was thanking me for my dedication, drive, all this thing. And then the last sentence was, if you'd like to discuss this further, my door is always open. I thought,
Yep. There's
so
your
you're telling
in.
me
You
there's a
find your
chance.
in. Yes.
That's exactly right. So I went back and then everything obviously unfolded, and that changed my life.
Absolutely.
Completely changed my
Absolutely.
life because it forced me to come out of my shell. I could no longer be successful in designing data centers and clouds from my office with the light off and the door closed. I was leading a team of HR professionals that are social butterflies.
Absolutely, yes.
And so I had to, it forced me out of my shell. And as I look back, that was a turning point in my life. It set me on this new path. And I came to this realization that this is my life purpose, to build others, to lift others up. And so all of that to be said, I think it's important if you feel that thing in your gut, you've got to follow it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you might not always know exactly how to follow it, but find a mentor, a coach, a guide
100%.
that you respect and admire.
100%.
Like you can't go find the guy at McDonald's and say, hey, I'm really struggling and expect. But there are going to be people in your life. And I think a lot of times people are afraid to go seek that help and guidance.
They are.
Why do you think that is?
I think that it's sometimes because we don't want to look inward a little bit, or we're comfortable where we are. Change is difficult. Hearing, well, here's some things you can do better, or how I can help you. I think that it's tough for people, right? It's tough, and we don't want to hear that, or they're just scared. And I think fear is one of the biggest inhibitors to success. You've kind of got to overcome that. But I was going to say, one of the best things you can do is get a mentor or a coach or a guide. They are there to help you. They're not there to judge. They're going to keep it real and stretch you. But absolutely, one of the best things, you've just got to have that courage to take the first step.
And it's also important that you find a coach or a guide that aligns with how you operate.
Absolutely.
I got into a little bit of a back and forth with somebody on social media, a couple of coaches, on a post that I made, and said, I'm going to do my best to kind of recall it, but it was something to the effect of a good coach and mentor is going to push you. They're going to stretch you. They're going to force you to open your eyes and view things through a different lens. All right. When you hear that, before I go any further, what comes to mind?
I agree. I think that is their role. They're not there to change you. They're held to help you and guide you and get you places you may not be able to go.
Okay.
That describes it to me.
Fair. Perfect. So that's where my head was at. Well, interestingly enough, there were two coaches, and I don't know if they were in cahoots, but one of them made a comment like, well, that's interesting. How do you force your clients to do what you say? And my immediate response was a little bit reactionary, and I didn't post this, but I thought, well, okay, I think you might have mistaken or focused a little bit on the word force.
Force, yeah.
And so anyways, there's a little bit of back and forth, and it turned into kind of a semantics issue, quite frankly. But then another coach chimed in. It's like, well, clearly your clients just want you to force them to do what you want, and that's an interesting – I'm like, okay, first of all, why do you have such a negative mindset?
Right.
If you were a coach – you should be coming to the table with a mindset of curiosity.
Absolutely.
And understanding.
Absolutely.
And while you're not officially a coach, you have a lot to do with building y'all's global talent program,
Absolutely.
right? So
yes.
you come in, and as the HR director, you do coach and guide and mentor all the time.
All the time. Yes. And people, and I don't believe people leave my office. They can correct me when they watch this thinking, she told me what to do, et cetera. There may be a couple of times because I have to make a business decision. Okay, but I'm really giving them the tools that they need. They're coming to me for help. I'm doing nothing if I'm not helping them get there. But it's my job to coach and to guide them and to meet them where they are and then help them go further, instead of I'm going to force you to do this because I said so.
Some people need a little bit more of a heavy-handed nudging.
Yes, most certainly.
And others, you can just ask the right question, and they will get there on their own.
Absolutely.
And that is the approach that I like to lean into first. But there are times when people are so frazzled, so stretched thin that they just don't know what to do.
Absolutely.
In those instances, it's okay to encourage and nudge and push a little bit more and say, well, I have had experience in this, and this is what has worked well for me. Do you think this might work well for you?
Absolutely.
Again, it's not me forcing that on them.
Not.
It's sharing experiences, giving them a little bit of maybe a different perspective and way to view things, and then nudging and encouraging.
Absolutely. And when they tell me I've done this and it's not working, I'm like, well, let's talk about your approach. Let's talk about why you think it's not working. Who are you interacting with? And really getting as much information as you can to help them in the way that they need to be helped, because it's not one size fits all. That's what I've learned.
Yeah. Okay, so let's keep going. Career progression. So you ended up leaving 9.
I did.
And going to Accelerate Energy as a generalist. So you made a lateral move, but to a different company.
Yes.
Talk me through, I guess, where your head was at whenever you made that transition.
I think that, I am a people person. I'm all about culture. I had survived a lot of change at 9, which is funny because everywhere I go, there's a lot of great change. But it was just time. And you had given me the best advice ever. And it said, sometimes in order to grow, you have to leave or you have to go. I hate that because I don't want to tell great people that and then leave. But I also understand that I'm doing them no service if they're staying in miserable, or myself for that matter. So I made a bit of a lateral move. I was doing, but it was a global company. So that was new for me. It was a smaller team, kind of like when I started at 9. It was me and my HR director. And so it was still a little bit of a stretch for me. So while it was lateral, I knew that there was probably the opportunity to move up in the future. There, I had no idea it was going to be where I am now, which I'm happy for. I'm much more fulfilled and happier. But even making a lateral move internally, I was so much happier and so much more fulfilled that it was absolutely worth it. And I had turned down about 4 job interviews before I accepted that job. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to dive into this a little bit deeper. Sometimes you have to leave to grow.
Yes.
And that resonates with me for a number of reasons that I want to spend a little bit of time on this topic. One, a mentor of mine told me the same thing at Forum. And I say mentor, he was my boss. He was our director of IT at the time. And when he shared that with me, I had a response similar to what I suspect you did, in that WTF.
Yep, absolutely.
I am pouring my heart and soul. I'm giving you everything, and you're telling me I got to leave?
Yeah.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
It is.
But as I've reflected back on my life and career, it was coming from a place of kindness and candor and transparency.
Absolutely.
And while I didn't want to hear it, it was what I needed to hear.
Absolutely.
And it would appear that as you have transitioned over to Accelerate, your career has continued to progress.
Absolutely, yes.
In a great, phenomenal direction. And
definitely.
I experienced the same thing.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And so it's tough. It's a tough pill to swallow when you are an employee that loves the team, loves your boss, loves everybody around you, loves the company, but you're told sometimes you have to leave to grow.
Absolutely.
Have you had to share that knowledge with anybody since?
Once I did, and I think he probably had one foot out the door at the time, and it really, really did hurt. But it was like, we don't have for you what you're wanting and needing right now. We could in the future. We're going to work on that, but we don't. And I just told him, I said, some of the best advice I ever received. And I was like, by the way, we don't want to lose you. Please don't print out your resignation letter and hand it to me, which I think he did about a year later. But I said, but that was some of the best advice I got. And it's that you have to look and internalize it a little bit, and what is best for you at the end of the day, what's best for whether it's your family or just really yourself. And if you're that miserable coming to work, you're not doing yourself any favors. And if you really want to grow that bad and we can't offer you that, this isn't mutually beneficial anymore.
So one of the things that I've been trying to focus on doing a lot, especially over the past 6 months, is trying to figure out the best way to have maximal impact on everybody that we work with.
Absolutely.
And this chain of events, me hearing that phrase from Stacey Rocca, me sharing that phrase with you, you sharing that phrase with a member of your team at your organization, It's challenging, it's powerful, but it helps people understand that what's most important in life is what makes sense for you.
Absolutely.
And that is also a beautiful example of how we can coach and mentor the people in our immediate sphere of influence. And if we have a significant enough impact, they can then coach and mentor the people in their sphere of influence. And so this permeation starts to occur. We're positively influencing more and more lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it starts with one and it trickles down, and then the impact is so broad.
It does. It starts with one. And that can be overwhelming. If you were in an organization, let's just say you're dropped into an organization and you're able to quickly recognize that the culture is maybe a bit toxic. Mm-hmm. And you think, my God, everywhere I look, everyone's upset, frustrated, pissed off. Like, what do I do? Well, you can make a difference. It starts small.
Yep.
And it's almost like a flywheel effect where you have to put just crazy amounts of energy and effort into moving that flywheel at first.
Absolutely.
But then you get Kristin on board, then you get Sharon on board, then you get Sally and Jason and Jonathan, and people around you start to understand, hey, we're doing some good stuff here.
Absolutely.
And then they get the people around them. Now, this doesn't happen overnight.
No, definitely not.
Patience is crucial in this process. And there are times when you can be beating your head against the wall thinking, oh, patience. Lord, give me strength. I need some
more.
patience.
Yeah. I have none right now. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now in a HR director role, Western Hemisphere, taking care of global talent development and things like that. So you've gone from HR assistant to coordinator to generalist to business partner to director, all in what, 8 years?
About 8 years. Yeah. It's unreal. Yes. High five.
That is incredible.
Yes, it is.
Now here's the thing. Like, I know whenever I shared that feedback with you, sometimes you got to leave to grow.
Absolutely.
I knew that you were meant for big things.
Thank you.
I did not know that it was going to happen this fast.
Me either.
I had a suspicion, but I think it's a testament to when you genuinely care and love what you do and find the right organization.
Absolutely.
That's where the magic happens.
Absolutely. 100%. It's kind of that, everything connecting together. It's like a puzzle, and they've all got to fit perfectly in order to find that. And it's out there, and it is, but I didn't expect it to happen this quickly either. I joked with my boss the other day, I'm trying not to have imposter syndrome. And she's like, well, you're a star. I believe in you. She wrote that on my whiteboard once. I'll never erase it. It's going to stay forever. And realizing that I have earned it and I deserved it. I mean, that's tough, but it has been very quick. And it's not quick for everyone, and that's okay too.
It's funny how sometimes we write something or somebody writes something on our board and it has so much power and impact that it just stays on the board.
Yeah.
And when you shared that there was a point in time I was focused on doing leading an integration that was challenging, we'll say.
Yep.
And myself, our team, we were so flustered. We were working actually 90, 100-hour weeks like over the Christmas break to try to do this big go live.
Yeah.
And I made a comment. I said, oh, God, I'm so frustrated. I want to punch a bunny. And and then the next day came in and somebody had drawn a cute little bunny on the whiteboard with a fist going at it. And that stayed up there for a while.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's good to be able to have those lighthearted moments because in the midst of that chaos and adversity, sometimes we need something lighthearted.
Absolutely.
And the power of that is just, it can't go unnoticed. And we have to lean into that.
Absolutely. And when you're going through the adversity too, find something to celebrate, find something to reconnect. And maybe it's the why we're doing this or what the outcome is going to be. And 18 months from now, we're going to look back and be like, wow, we did that. But finding that connection and those moments to like pause and have the gratitude or the humor in it will get you so far. It's better than sulking, even though I do sulk sometimes. So.
Well, I think we're human.
We are human.
Right? There's going to be ebbs and flows.
Absolutely.
What's important is that we're ebbing and flowing and moving in the upward trajectory,
Absolutely.
in the right direction.
Always, yes.
Okay, all right. As an HR director, talk me through your experiences and what skills did you have to learn and develop to operate at the director level opposed to the business partner, opposed to the generalist?
I think in the generalist space, I was very in the HR operations side, the payroll, the benefits, and still helping in business partnering. I think you can be a business partner at any level. I still call myself one. But I had to learn to listen better. I talk a lot, so I had to listen. I had to learn to slow down a bit. That's very hard. I'm just fast moving. And I had to learn to be a little bit more strategic. And that's something as I continue to grow in being a director that I'm working on, and really self-confidence. Self-confidence and strategic mindset are probably the two big ones for me, because now you are seen as you're on par with that director of finance. You're on par with that director of accounting. You're at their level and they're going to expect the same. So you have to have the confidence to be able to speak their language and know what you're talking about and help them strategically navigate the workforce as well.
What has helped you the most in terms of building your confidence?
I have an outstanding leader. I've been fortunate. You were an outstanding leader. My current leader is very outstanding. Having that you're a star on the board. I'm a words of affirmation person to a fault. So sometimes hearing that, but I think practicing the pause and looking and saying, I can do it, and that self-belief. And that's hard to do, especially when you're in the weeds and you're struggling and nothing is going your way. And I also have ruled out the whole comparison factor, because that's the thief of joy. It sounds cheesy, but it's so true. I focus on me, and I try. And what's the worst I'm going to happen is I'm going to fail. And that's okay, because I'll learn something there as well. But I've learned that I am here because I've earned it. And so I use that. What am I going to do next? And I never settle and go, I can do it. I can do it. I'm like the little engine that could in my head when I have to public speak or something like that, to our senior management team or whatever it may be. And then again, having a good mentor as well really helps.
I think that confidence comes from having a stack of undeniable results that you are who you say you are.
Absolutely. Authenticity.
That comes with experience and time.
Yes.
And it's easy to step into a new role or a promotion and struggle with imposter syndrome.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a very real thing that I think all of us deal with at some point in time. And this also speaks to that topic of determination, consistency, grit, perseverance, all of those buzzwords we hear in motivational videos all the time. Yes. There's something to that.
There is.
Because when you step in and you start struggling with that imposter, you just have to keep going.
Absolutely. And proof is in the pudding. What are you doing? You're doing it. You're not just saying you're doing it or I can do it. You're showing that you can do it. And then you go, wait, I did that.
There's so much work involved with learning these new skills and learning the business and operations. And, I've come to reflect on this in recent weeks, that the work is actually doing more work on us than we are doing on the work.
Absolutely. Very well said.
It's crazy to think I'm so focused on this integration. Mm-hmm. I'm so focused on all these major projects and how stressful that is. And then looking back and thinking, I learned a lot in that process.
Absolutely.
That I can now turn around and impart that knowledge on the people that we work with today and share it and help them learn from all the mistakes that we made.
Yeah.
And it's challenging because also there's this element of you're not always going to be able to get them to understand what you're talking about until they experience it.
Absolutely.
And there's a story that I share occasionally where our VP of IT was doing a big bang cutover, like 150 email accounts. And whenever he was talking to me about it, I thought, that's a lot of accounts overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if something breaks? No, everything's fine. Like, we mapped it out. We've done 3 or 4 test users. I'm like, 3 or 4.
3 or 4.
Whole users.
Wow.
Cool. And I thought, what if we broke it up by accounting and then HR and then distribution and supply chain? And no, we're going to do Big Bang. We got it. Cool.
Okay.
Go get it.
Yeah.
Went and got it, and nobody within that organization could use email for, I want to say, like 30 hours, something like that. So not the end of the world, but when that happened, which I kind of had a suspicion that it might. Now, I wasn't into the weeds of the technology like he and his team were, but I was thinking about it through the lens of risk aversion.
Yes.
Is it worth it?
Right.
To do it overnight as opposed to staging it over 4 days?
Exactly.
Type of a thing.
Yeah.
In any event, so everything was down. He and his team didn't sleep at all. They were just scrambling, just doing everything they could. And my role, basically at that point in time, turned into the protector. Like, the president's coming to me, hey, sit back. We've got it under control. We will do a debrief after it's all said and done to share the lessons that we learned.
Absolutely.
Because there are lessons that were learned. And it's important that when we as leaders, coaches, guides share situations and examples like that, that we understand, if I share something with you and say, Kristin, you might want to watch out for this. You've never experienced it, so it's not even part of your schema.
Right.
And you're like, oh, Sean, he just doesn't like risk.
Yeah,
we're going to do
of
it.
course.
Right? And then, bam, and then it happens. But if I've shared enough about my experience and how I was able to successfully navigate it,
Absolutely.
what that then does for you is gives you the opportunity, we had a conversation about this. We can course correct really quickly here, as opposed to you having to spend all the time figuring it out the way I did.
Exactly.
And so that is something that it took me a while as a coach to figure out of, all right, well, I can share this stuff, but at the end of the day, you're going to do what you want to do anyways.
That's true. Yes.
My role is just to kind of help mitigate that risk and show you how to identify the road signs as early as possible so that you know which route to take.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. And then the other piece that I want to dive into is the strategic thought side of things. What does that mean to you?
You know, I look at strategy. Our strategy is where we are now, where we want to be, and how we're going to get there. I simplify it down and simplify it down into that. So I think it's thinking, but what then, all the time, because we get so focused in the now and what we're doing now and how's it go. But what then? What are we going to do later on? If I roll out a program, you know, for my region, what about the others in the other half of the world that we support, etc. With the business. So that's really, I knew hardly anything about strategy, you know, in many of my years of my career that I'm diving in and getting interested in that. So that was the simplest way that someone told me the but what then, and where we are, where we want to be, and how we're going to get there. That's our strategy. But on the flip side of that, I'm going to derail for a second. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So me being a culture and a people person, I've really had to find that balance between the two.
Well, it is. It's all about balance, right? That's what it comes down to. And you have to have those strategic thought leaders.
Absolutely.
And you also have to have the people
yes,
that love culture and know how to build
absolutely.
culture.
Absolutely.
How has the culture been for you at Accelerate? And follow-up question, what sort of impact have you made on the culture?
It's been phenomenal. I like companies that are growing and passionate about what they do. That's what I loved about Nine. That's what I love about Accelerate. So the culture's been great. We have a great leadership team that drives it. I think, yes, culture starts at the top, but everybody has a piece in that. So it's been really great. I'm thriving there because of a great culture and great people that I work with, many of which I've helped hire, I guess. So maybe I'm playing a part in that. But I think I help drive it by being a voice of why it's great to work here, why we're a good place to work, what we're doing as an organization to provide clean energy to people that wouldn't normally have it, not being able to cook in their homes because they don't have natural gas or whatever it might be. So having that pride in where I work, I think resonates with other people. I jokingly tell people if I do interview them, which is rare now, I probably sound like a used car salesman, but I also have a bad poker face and I can't lie. So this is genuine, and I really do believe that this is a great place to work. You've got to work for it. But I believe also I've just built relationships with people I might not have ever talked to otherwise. I've built those relationships because then when we start talking, it goes out and we have a collaborative environment and a collaborative culture. So I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I think I've done a big part just by being involved and being in a good mood. It goes a long way just being in a good mood and talking to people and being energized about the culture, because either way it's going to spread. So if you're in a bad mood and you're toxic, it's going to spread. But if you try to have that positivity and genuine positivity, I should say, in relationships with people, I think that really does drive culture, and it does somewhat start at the top.
And I think that positive mindset is, yes, obviously infectious, but also it can be that guiding light. It can open doors for you. And whenever I think about, yes, I started in IT and then HR and then some of these other functional areas that had the opportunity to grow into and start leading, and some of my predecessors that were leading those teams, they didn't view things through a lens of optimism. Right?
Absolutely.
That's challenging to deal with. And so I can vividly recall having team meetings with the other directors and VPs, and one of them actually made the comment, "Sean, you're just the eternal optimist." Okay. Cool.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm okay with that, quite frankly. And it might not happen immediately, but when you're in a leadership role and you constantly are just like bitching and moaning and complaining, and your team picks up on it.
Absolutely.
And then the people around you pick up on it.
Absolutely.
And the people in the business are going to think, do we really want to promote that person?
Exactly.
Well, he or she can execute at a very high level, but damn, they're pissy all the time.
Yeah.
So it can close doors.
Absolutely.
If you have the wrong mindset. And then if you have the right mindset, it can slam those doors open for you.
Absolutely.
And go from the IT guy to then the HR guy to then the safety, then the transportation, the PM, like all these other guys. Because I was able to view things through a lens of optimism.
Absolutely.
And another thing kind of along a similar vein was one of the biggest compliments that I ever received from Ann was a situation occurred at one of our districts, and I was actually in leadership training with Hitch in the Fort Worth area, and I get a call from David, "Hey, I'm not telling what you do, but you might want to go."
Yeah.
"Yes, sir. Packing my stuff right now."
Yeah, on the way.
Hit the road, 6-hour drive. Yep. So had to step out of training, but I went in, had to defuse this challenging employee relations situation that unfortunately a member of the HR team had contributed to, which made it very challenging. You might know what I'm talking about.
I absolutely do, yes.
And going in to this environment full of engineers and operators and that are all pissed off at HR, and then corporate HRs coming in.
Yeah.
What I did was sit down and just listen. Hey, this sucks, guys.
Yeah.
Tell me what happened.
Yeah. Talk
me through it. And then there's this period of time where they're like just getting it off their chest.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
I can't believe that. No, I know. It's dumb. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And you just have to be empathetic and listen. And when you do that, they just pour it out, and you get so much information. I wasn't defensive. And yes, my role as leading HR, I needed to protect my HR team.
Absolutely.
And they had made mistakes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Fair. But I needed to get the entire picture.
Absolutely.
And just hearing them out and then hearing from the HR manager what had happened from her perspective, and then talking to some of the guys in the shop, getting their perspective on it. Just letting them get it off of their chest and then ask the question, what do you think we should do here?
Right.
What do you think we should do here? What do you think we should do here? And then you start soliciting that feedback from everybody involved, and you're not going to get the same answer from everybody.
Nope.
But you will get enough information to craft a plan that can appease the majority of the population.
Absolutely.
Which we did.
Yep.
We went through, very challenging. I'm tying this all back to my conversation with Ann. I come back and she shared feedback with me that everybody that she had heard from made the comment, Sean is a calming force. And that struck me beyond belief, in that I wasn't thinking of myself as a calming force. I was just trying to figure out what happened.
Right.
But it speaks to the power of listening.
Absolutely.
As leaders, as managers, as anybody in an organization, if someone's frustrated, just listen.
Absolutely.
Now, again, we're dancing around this topic of balance because there is a balance here. If somebody comes in all day, every week, every month, and all they're doing is complaining, you have to learn how to shut it down.
Right.
And a trick that I've learned for that is start a timer. Okay. Well, it's been 15 minutes. How about we go grab lunch?
Exactly.
How about we go do something different?
Absolutely.
You shift the topic of the conversation, and then you start focusing on something positive.
Absolutely.
And when you start doing that consistently over time, eventually that person, maybe subconsciously, they're going to think, well, I get to complain for 10 minutes and then Sean's going to say he's going to start talking about his puppy.
Right.
And, you know, right. But what you're doing is you're starting to train those behaviors out of that negative mindset. And sometimes it takes a long time to do that because now we're kind of getting deep into the psyche, and some people just have this neurotic, negative mindset that permeates their entire life.
Absolutely.
And when they bring it into the workforce, you have to figure out how to suppress that piece.
Yes.
I'm not saying we have to suppress who people are,
no.
But there's good things about people and bad things, and we want to be able to suppress some of those things that are having a negative impact on the team.
Absolutely, and kind of highlight the positive attributes that they do bring as well.
Okay. So what's next for you?
I don't know what's always next. I am going back to get another degree. I'm going to do communications because I love it. More corporate communications than, media or that kind of thing. I'm not going to draft. We have a great communications manager, so that won't be me. But really, I hate public speaking. I don't know if you know that about me because I talk so much and people are like, you're good at it. I'm like, I'm shaking up here. And so I want to be able to do that as I grow in the talent space and as I grow in the strategic director and business partner space, to be able to have that presence. But I when I'm done pinching myself because of how great things are for me right now, I'm sure there'll be next. I'm always looking a little bit of what's next. I always joke with my boss, I'm not coming for your job tomorrow. Number one, I don't ever want her to leave. So there's that. But I think I'm always going to keep thriving and keep growing, keep having that grit. So whether I stay in this position the rest of my life, probably not. You know me, I move up and on. But whatever I'm doing, I think I'm going to be doing it with positivity, staying myself and being true to who I am. That's something I've learned over the last 8 years in HR is being true to myself. So I think continuing to grow and be the best HR director that Accelerate has ever seen. Sorry to my peers, but that's really probably what's next for me, is really taking this to the next level.
I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. Okay. What is one of the biggest lessons that you have learned over the years?
Be true to yourself. Absolutely authentic and true to yourself. Not everyone's going to like it. Not everyone's going to like you, and that's okay. It's also okay to be vulnerable and meet them where they are. But at the end of the day, being true to yourself is probably the best thing that you can do.
I love it.
Thank you.
How do people contact you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I know my last name is a little bit hard to find. You can tag me if you want. Email. LinkedIn's probably the best way. I accept all requests. Unless you're trying to sell me something, I won't respond to your message. But absolutely probably the best way is LinkedIn. I'm not a big social media person because I'm in HR and you're IT, you get it. So yeah, LinkedIn, I would love to make new connections and talk with people.
I appreciate it.
Of course.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will have all of Kristin's contact information in the show notes. Please reach out to her. She is a phenomenal, wonderful human, great person to just go have coffee with and learn a tremendous amount from. That is all we have for the show today. Thank you so much, and y'all have a good one.